this lesson, we're going to focus on grid. So we're going to place our elements of the website accordingly to the layout. Finally, we have some columns and some sections, so it would be much easier for our eyes to look at it. So this is how our website looks like currently. What we need to do is we need to put those elements into columns. So if you compare it with our layout, we'll see that some elements are close to each other, some are separated. So for doing it, we're going to use Grid from Bootstrap. What is Bootstrap? So Bootstrap is an open source toolkit. It's a front-end component library. So it's a very big and powerful tool. However, we're going to only use a piece of it, which is grid. So we're not going to code the grid by ourselves. We're going to use a library and we can adjust it to our needs. So building the layouts would be much more easier. If you're curious about grid system, you can open the documentation, which is available at gatsbootstrap.com, and you can read about all the theory that stands behind grid and Bootstrap. But I will tell you the most important things you need to know to make it work. So let's get back to our HTML document, and let's focus on HTML for a while. If I open the whole folder, I will see that I have Bootstrap Grid CSS. And you can see some code out there. All that it's written here is CSS. But I don't want you to analyze it, memorize it, or learn. We're just going to use the grid that is defined here. So if we want to use this style sheet, we also need to link it in our HTML document. We have our styles.css, we've got external fonts, but we also need Bootstrap. So I would like to link it before my styles. The question is why I'm doing it before, not as the last link tag. The answer is that Bootstrap Grid might have some styles that can cause a conflict, that can actually overwrite our styles. So to make our styles more important, we put it on the last place in terms of the style sheet we have. So I'm changing the name here. The file is called Bootstrap Grid. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting back to my HTML. Okay, I'm saving it, and my Bootstrap Grid is applied. Let's see if I can see any changes. Well, actually, nothing has happened yet, but if I dig deeper into my HTML code and head section, I will see that Bootstrap Grid CSS is applied. So the question you might have is how we can use Bootstrap Grid. So in the documentation that they show us how 3 columns are created. We can see HTML code here with some attributes which are classes, CSS classes, and we're going to use them as well. So the very first tag is div. Did you remember div? This is the container. This is the tag that's very generic and we can use it for various purposes, mainly for layouting, for placing the elements, nesting, etc. So we've got div with a class container, and below there is a row. Row class means that all the elements, all the columns that are included will be displayed in one row, so one by one, just like here. So let's copy container and row, and let's put them into our document, HTML document. But before, we're going to check out our layout. So I'm opening portfolio layout just here. And if I enlarge it, you will see that here there is a container and I have a 2 columns. So container row classes would be applied for the header section. So I have the header, and in the header I'm pasting these 2 lines that I copied from the documentation. So I'm having the container open, but I also need to close this div. It closes just before the header is closed. So I'm adding div. I'm doing tab here. So everything that is included is are children of this container. And I have row. I need row to display 2 columns near each other. So I also need to close the row just before one div. Also nesting the elements within each other. Alright, so I can see that all these elements mentioned here are children of row. What's next mentioned in the documentation? We've got another class which is called Class-10. It means that this is one column, and the width of the columns would be generated automatically depending on how many columns do we have. So they will take as much space as they need to. Let me copy it as well. So if we compare it with the layout, we see that this is one column and this is the second one. So everything here, like heading, list, and the button would be in one div called Class-10. So everything here till this place will be children of this div. So I need to close it. And the next content would be another column. So again, we're pasting div, and figure would be the children of this div. So let's recap what actually happened. I will make it more suitable for this display. So we have the container. It starts here and closes here. So the whole header is in a container. What this class actually does, well, you'll see in a minute in the web browser. And under container, we've got a row, and row helps us to display those elements near each other. So we have one column and the second one. So we can use comments, left column. This is the left column, and underneath we've got right column. So now it's much more easier to follow that this is the right column and this is the left column. So always pay attention to the closing tags, because sometimes it's very easy to get messy in your code. So if you click on the tag, you will see the blue underline. You can easily see whether the given tag is actually closed. So here when I'm clicking on div, I see that this is the opening tag, and in 37 line it's being closed. And the same with the right column. I have opening div tag and closing in the 45th line. Okay, let's save it. Let's see what's generated on the website. I will close the DevTools and see that actually I have 2 columns. If I run inspect, you will see that they're getting stretched to the full side, so full width, so there are no longer 2 separate columns. But if I change the position of the DevTools to make the resolution, the width of the window browser bigger, I will see that they fit and that they are displayed one by one close to each other. So I can see that this is my left column and here my right column. One thing we can adjust at this level of the layout is to change the width, the size actually of the image we put, to make it smaller, to actually fill the full width of the columns. So let's get back to style CSS. And we can write that every image we have displayed on the website would take maximum width of the container. So maximum of the image would be 100% of its parent. It means that if call SM class has a specific width applied, for instance 600 pixels, the image, although its natural size, its original size, it's 700 pixels, it won't exceed 600 pixels because we're limiting its width by this line of code. So let's write it here. And here I'm showing you how we can make comments in CSS. I can just write a text. So this is limiting the width of the image. So it takes 100 width of the parent maximum, and I'm highlighting all the text, and again comment slash, so everything written here is a comment. So it's a bit different because in HTML we've got this characters, and in CSS we've got slash and asterisk. Alright, so let's save it and let's refresh our website. And suddenly you can see that the image is getting smaller and it takes the whole width of the column. So we have the two columns near each other. So the header, let's say it's ready in terms of the grid. We've got the column 1, left one, and right one, and everything is in one row, and with the container. So what the container does, it limits our width, and it depends on the screen resolution. So for bigger screens, the container would be bigger. For smaller, would be smaller. So this is the responsive web design, and we're not going to get into details in this course, but I'll be mentioning some things that you can use while using Bootstrap.